Hi, I'm Christy McDonald, and here is what's coming up this week on One Detroit. Ray Gray, one of Michigan's longest-serving inmates, is now free. How his art brought national attention to his case. Plus, it's a summer of campaigning in the city of Detroit. Nolan and Stephen weigh in on city council races and how to spend billions in Lansing. And personal stories of understanding during Pride Month. It's all coming up on One Detroit.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support for this program provided by the Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV, the Kresge Foundation, Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Also brought to you by and viewers like you.
Hi, I'm Christy McDonald, and welcome to One Detroit. Thanks so much for being with me. Coming up this week on the show, it is a summer of campaigning in Detroit with a crowded city council race, plus negotiating in Lansing over how to spend the billions of dollars heading to Michigan. Our One Detroit contributors, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson from American Black Journal, weigh in on all of the politics. Plus, the personal stories of love and acceptance as we recognize Pride Month. And then Juneteenth freedom celebrations here in Detroit. It is all coming up. We're starting with the story of Ray Gray. Ray was released from prison in May after serving almost 50 years. He was one of Michigan's longest-serving inmates. We did a story on Ray last fall, not only about his murder conviction and how the Innocence Project was working to get him released, but also about the art he created while incarcerated. Now, Ray is home, thrilled to be out, not so happy with the terms of his release. Bill Kubota visited him at his home in Livonia.
Late May, Muskegon. Ray Gray checks out of state prison after a 48-year stay, although he's always maintained they had the wrong man. Days later, Gray and his wife Barbara talk about his release to attorney and podcast host Mike Morse.
If you would have lied 10, 20 years ago and told the parole board or somebody that you were involved, do you think you would have gotten out sooner?
Yes, in fact, I was offered a plea of 10 to 20, but I refused it, and I often point out to them that my position of innocence has never been helpful. It's a matter of principles. And I realize that a lot of people will say, man, you're crazy for holding on to that.
Gray agreed to a no-contest plea, still not admitting guilt for that murder a half-century ago.
With this situation, they made some adjustments to get me out. I don't want to say it's making a deal with the devil or nothing, but it was a situation where I couldn't just say I did something I didn't do.
Right.
We first told you Gray's story on One Detroit last fall, an acclaimed artist behind bars with friends on the outside who believed in his innocence.
Art has helped a lot. That was sort of like my salvation. And her,
Ray met Barbara in the late 70s. She was an art teacher working with inmates back then.
In the last year and a half, we've had one visit.
In Muskegon, Ray kept painting through the pandemic.
And this is when I'm dealing with the COVID.
We
and
have
the world with a mask.
such respect for the first responders, many of whom lost their lives because of trying to help others. So this is a nurse with the weight of the world on her shoulders. And the vaccine was just starting to take hold when he did this.
Well, tell me about when you painted that. What was going on in your life at that very moment?
Well, at the time I was painting that, the prison that I was in, it was 99% positive for COVID. and it was the worst in the United States.
At age 69, somehow Ray didn't catch it. He's in search of art supplies.
Yeah, you may not have ever seen this. This is called medium W. You can mix this with any oil paint and make it water soluble.
Oh, okay. The art store was amazing. In fact, every day has been, and it's like a little touch of heaven.
An incarcerated artist goes without. Long-handled brushes forbidden inside. They could be weapons.
The easel was something I always wanted. At one time we could have them, but then they made that outlawed too because they were made out of wood.
They usually had bunks, and he had the top because it allowed him a little more room. He would be painting late into the night when the rest of the prison would be mostly going to sleep or whatever. So he keeps remarking, this is so much better than the top bunk.
The Grays are on their third week together in person at an apartment in Livonia.
She and I collaborate a lot. Now that I'm actually here, I may be able to convince her to pick up a paintbrush again.
I love watching him anyway. It's just been a long time since I was able to. He has a technique that's quite impressive. The sky that he's working on has a certain beauty to it already.
What's this going to be, Ray?
Well, this is the one where I'm coming home. And this is the vision of the city. But it's going to be vague. Because it always was vague. It was never clear. And it always felt like I was on a different planet.
Detroit, 1973. A lone witness said Gray was the killer and still claims that today, though others testified Gray was somewhere else at the time. Gray's advocate Bill Proctor asked Ellis Stafford for help.
There was no physical evidence, one witness only. No, this can't be true. This is what really got me, Mike. The warden allowed 2 retired investigators to come see a man in prison. Why did you allow us to do it? Well, I found out later when I got there. They didn't believe Ray did it. They believed he was innocent. So we do what we always do. I've interviewed thousands of witnesses, suspects, and victims as my career with the state police. But we interviewed Ray for 3.5 hours.
In fact, initially, I thought they were interrogating me for some other crime or something. And they were extremely hard. There's some hard questions. But the truth can stand up to hard questions.
And those techniques which we use to detect deception, we didn't see any.
What year was this?
This was 2012. About 2012, yeah.
Almost 10 years ago.
And I was blown away. I'm like, wow. But what could I do? I didn't know what to do.
What's the pound sign? This.
Enter your new 4 to 9-digit password.
So many new things, new surroundings, new friends. It's all changing. What about Ray's work?
Will it look different?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, it's going to look different. It's going to definitely look different. I'll take that one. You kind of evolve in periods, like Picasso had his blue periods and he had his Cubist period and all this sort of thing. So you go through these different transitions.
Here, still in progress, Going Home. The first new piece created on the outside. Ray Gray free but not exonerated. If he were, he'd be entitled to a very large payment for being wrongfully convicted.
I'm not happy about this at all, but I'm learning from Ray Gray. I need to stop grinding my teeth and pounding the table and help him enjoy his freedom while we consider what next steps to take to find true justice for Ray Gray.
I'm able to fight better without chains on my legs and wrists. I never had them here, chains here. They were always here. But now that they're released and I'm out among the free people, I can fight better. I can fight better here than there.
It is a summer of campaigning in the city of Detroit. A lot of council seats are up for grabs. And in Lansing, they're looking at prioritizing the billions of dollars heading to the state. Our One Detroit contributors, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of American Black Journal, weigh in on the leadership change and where the money should go.
Well, Steve Henderson, there's a big election in Detroit this summer, headed into the August primary. Of course, a lot of this will be decided in the August primary. And we have an unusual year in Detroit in that we have 4 open city council seats. And they've attracted quite a bit of interest. I think each of the open seats have anywhere from 6 to 8 candidates, and even the incumbents, most of the incumbents other than Mary Sheffield, as far as I can see, face challengers. What are you expecting out of the election?
Well, I mean, I think the council races are interesting because of the open seats, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time since the redraws, when we split them into districts, I think that we've had this many open seats. You've got a lot of people who've just decided they don't want to do this anymore. Raquel Castaneda Lopez and Andre Spivey, Brenda Jones all said, they're just calling it quits. And, the idea behind the districts originally was that you'd have these, political fiefdoms, if for lack of a better term, where the district system and the district representatives and the mayor's offices that in each of those districts would produce candidates from neighborhoods who would have a shot at council who didn't before.
It looks like that might be the case.
I think that's actually happening. You look at these districts and the people who want to serve, they're people who are really involved in those neighborhoods on the ground. A lot of them are community activists. Some of them are business folks. I think this is part of the maturation of this new system, which was supposed to give ordinary people, a better shot and a bigger voice in city government.
And it's good to see politicians leave when they feel, they've done what they can do or they're no longer interested in it. So many hang on to these offices for life, particularly in a place where, and in an office where name ID is everything. But you're going to have a whole new council, 4 new members. Would you expect, Steve, a new approach? What will that mean for mayor-council relationships at this point?
Well, the question is always who on council is able to lead others in standing up to the mayor. Right now, Brenda Jones every once in a while can get it together and say, hey, we see it this way, we want to do it this way, and can force the mayor to change something. I mean, Prop N last year was a good example of that. Council didn't love the way that it was rendered the first time. They made them go back and redo it. The question now will be who's in that position, right? Likely new president is going to be Mary Sheffield, is my guess. Can she rally the other members of council to challenge the mayor? It's supposed to be a system of some checks and balances. It's a very strong mayor city, but the council's there to voice individual parts of the city concerns about legislation. And you always wonder how effective that can be, especially when you have a mayor who is as powerful as Mike Duggan is right now.
And who is also on the ballot and has no serious challenges. Nobody has a chance to beat him. I know Anthony Adams is in the race and some others, but you would have to think that Mike Duggan's going to win hands down. How important is it that someone in an office like mayor has a challenge and does have to mount a vigorous defense of their tenure when it's time to run for?
I am a huge fan of elections, right? And real elections and choices and real choices for voters. We should have better candidates for mayor, I think, than we do. And when I say better, and I don't mean to disparage the people who are in the race. I actually like Anthony Adams. I think a lot of him. I don't think he's a very strong candidate. Mike Duggan, Tom Barrow. This will be, I think, the 5th time he's run for mayor. Each time voters have said no. I just don't think that doesn't make for much of a challenge. One thing that's true, though, and I don't think anybody could have predicted this. You go back to Mike Duggan's original election, I guess 2013,
Yeah.
and think about how hard it was for him to win that election. I mean, he couldn't get on the ballot because of the mistakes they made with signatures or something. He had to make amount of write-in campaign that seemed insane. He wins that, and now he is, he seems unbeatable.
But voters see progress. And I think no matter in this city, they were frustrated so long by the lack of progress and things heading in the wrong direction. And they're seeing now a different direction and not worried so much all the time about things getting closed and cut and services going away. And I think they're responding to that. But Mike Duggan and the council, no matter who it is, are going to probably, as a group, have the easiest job of running the city than anyone has had in a long, long time because of this huge flush of money that's coming in from the federal government. But the question is, this money is not there forever. I mean, this is a splash, a flood of money that's going to come through for the next 2 years. And all these communities and the state have to figure out how they're going to spend it in a responsible way and a sustainable way. They can't start a whole lot of programs that are going to need continued revenue to sustain themselves because that money surely won't be there.
The fear among a lot of the politicians is that you spend it on one-time things, thinking that you don't want to have to sustain them in the future, and that those things don't make the difference that they could. I mean, this is a weird influx of money. I mean, it's being done on behalf of an emergency, which was the pandemic, which is sort of a time defined issue, but it's so much money that the potential to spend it on things that could go far beyond pandemic recovery is there.
But the limitations are there as well. I mean, this would be wonderful if we could say, gosh, the state's getting $5 billion or $9 billion total. Schools are getting all this money. If we could use it to finally get our infrastructure here up to where it needs to be, but there's strings on that to make that harder. I would advocate for using it to get our workforce up to the point where it needs to be. We're still a lagging state in terms of skill level and education level. We could use that money as a big push, for example, to get everybody literate in the state so that they can work.
I think what you'll see, I mean, the mayor's plan, I think, rightfully focuses on the city's biggest problem, which is that, that there are too many people who just don't have opportunity to escape poverty in Detroit. But again, if you can build in there these things that make permanent difference for people and not temporary difference, that'll be money well spent.
Here at One Detroit, we have in-depth reporting on issues impacting all of us, but we also provide a space for people to share their stories, to bring more cultural understanding of the people who live in our neighborhoods across Metro Detroit. We started a series of storytelling for AAPI Heritage Month, and as we recognize June as Pride Month, we wanted to share with you part of a series of conversations we had with Dan Moen and Joe Hunter. They have been a couple for 11 years, both advocates for equality. Dan had been searching for his birth mother, and Dan talks about how that search and discovering his roots helped inspire his local advocacy.
Diversity in culture is always what has driven you, sir. Mr. Moen, who comes from 23 Mile and Van Dyke in the probably one of the more Caucasian areas of the map.
Well, yes. Well, I grew up in an area up in like the Romeo, Washington area, and it is like 90-some% white out there. This is the National Honor Society drawing that I did.
Yeah, weren't you the diversity like in
Well,
most
me
of
and the
your
other
classes?
adoptees.
Okay.
Class of 2006. There was a group of kids when I was in high school that flew this really gigantic Confederate flag around our school. And I remember they used to interrogate me and they would interrogate other people. And it was really scary because it was that feeling of kind of like, as soon as you leave the house, and this is something that I went to an adoption heritage camp not too long ago, and we talked about this to other white parents who adopt children of other ethnicities. You may raise your child one way in every possible shape and form with all the love and care, but you have to understand that the minute they leave your house, they're not seen as your children. They're seen as a BIPOC person, as an LGBT person. They're seen completely different. I just remember like that feeling of like needing to belong was definitely something that kind of felt off. Now, I'm just speaking for myself. I don't speak for all adoptees by any means. But it was just that feeling of kind of like, you know, you're not white enough to be white, but because of how I look, I was always like, where are you from? You're so exotic. Are you from the area? And I'm like, I live at 29 Mile Road. I had people touching my hair. I had people...
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I remember one kid was just kind of like poofy hair, and like, so, but back at that time, I didn't have the words and the language to explain what those feelings were, because I didn't understand what microaggression was or aggressions were. I didn't understand any of that. So I just thought it was just kind of like bullying. So I buried a lot of that growing up to where it's like, oh, it's just bullying, because that's what people told me. It's just bullying, they're mean, move on. But it embeds into you. It really embeds into you throughout most of your life. And again, I don't speak for all adoptees, but for adoptees who come from different cultures, it's like you go into one circle and it's like, you're not white, so we're going to teach you this way. But then sometimes you go into your own community and they're like, what kind of a Filipino are you? Don't you know this and this and this? And it's like, no, I wasn't raised around Filipinos. I don't speak this language. I don't do these things. So it was very difficult with that.
I can only imagine. It's funny because I know that during the course of our relationship, kind of teaching you the language around all of those things has been quite the journey for us, just because me being a black man of color, like I know about microaggressions. I know there have been quite many times where I've had to deal with it, and so I know that that's like a lot of our relationship, a lot of how we connected has been me kind of seeing a situation and letting you know that what just happened to you was messed up, right?
Yeah, and
let me explain it.
And it would go over my head all the time because, again, I didn't have the language to explain it. I didn't know the wording of it. I remember in high school, I had a group of guys literally play off my Asian heritage as a kind of a joke. And it wasn't until many, many years later that I realized I was basically like an entertainer to their amusement. And it was humiliating. In fact, I actually kind of buried that story most of my life until more recently where I talked about it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was not a good memory. But again, it's sad because it's like it's a prolonged experience. And there's that feeling of shame when you learn something a lot later in life. But at the same time, I don't shy from it. It's part of who I am, which is what fueled me to want to find my biological family.
For more of Dan and Joe's story and all of our conversations from AAPI Heritage Month, just head to our website at onedetroitpbs.org. All right, Juneteenth freedom celebrations are happening this weekend in Detroit and around the country. 165 years ago, on June 19th, Union Major General Gordon Granger landed in Galveston, Texas, with the news that the Civil War had ended and the enslaved were free. The Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History has events from June 17th through the 20th, marking Juneteenth Jubilee Freedom Weekend. We have more on American Black Journal, plus info on our website at onedetroitpbs.org. That is going to do it for me. Have a great weekend. I will see you next Thursday. Take care and be well.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.